Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J. This morning is Chicago Tribune columnist extraordinaire, John Cass. John.
And host of your favorite podcast, The Chicago Way.
There you go. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yes, The Chicago Way, excellent podcast.
I don't get paid for it.
I've been on it a few times. Yes. Always a fun conversation.
Trying to get Dan Proft to talk about his personal life is excruciatingly difficult.
I'm, just not ready to be that vulnerable with you. Oh, boy. All right, let's go back to the border. And, one of the reasons that I think honest, hardworking Americans are so frustrated with the political class, thus the Trump appeal, is because you just never get off these hamster wheels on substantive issues that impact their quality of life. That's the conversation we're having about border security today is a conversation we've been having and a policy debate we've been having for at least 40 years, right? And even most pronounced, the first two terms of the Joe Obama administration. Now it's Joe Obama redux. To my point, we'll get to it, but I'm sure you heard and saw some of the videos from Ted Cruz over the weekend per his trip to the border and the images that he released that the Biden administration didn't want him to release of the conditions at the Customs and Border Patrol facility there in Donna, Texas. But this is 6 years ago. 6 years ago, and we played it on this show. 6 years ago, Ted Cruz at a Senate hearing with then Joe Obama administration ICE director Sandy Saldana talking about the same thing. For example,
Ms. Saldana, I want to note that your testimony here, when I ask you how many criminals ICE released in 2013, you were off by a factor of 3. You said 30,000. The correct answer is 104,000. There were 68,000 criminals, criminally illegal aliens, that ICE declined to begin deportation proceedings against, despite the fact, as Senator Sessions observed, the federal law that you're holding up there says they shall be deported. The Obama administration refused to deport them. That's 68,000. In addition to that, there were 36,000 in deportation proceedings with criminal convictions that the Obama administration released. And I would note that among those were 193 murderers with homicide convictions, were 426 people with sexual assault convictions, were over 16,000 criminal illegal aliens with drunk driving convictions released by this administration because this administration refuses to follow the law.
That was 2015, talking about the proximate years. In 2021, we have Chief Patrol Agent Brian Hastings, who's a section chief for Customs and Border Patrol, tweeting out, year to date, 861 criminals have been encountered at the border, including 92 sex offenders and 63 gang members. And we know that so far, Customs and Border Patrol officials report more than 20,000 illegal aliens have been released into the interior on their own recognizance. Compare that to, that's so far this year. Compare that to all of 2020, that would be Trump's last year, 1,000. 20x increase. But hey, it's just seasonal. This is just the swallows to Capistrano. That's what's happening here. Nothing to see. It just happens every year about this time. No, I don't think so. Oh, by the way, the Trump administration also was efficient in processing asylum claims. More asylum claims granted by the Trump administration in 2019 than in any year since at least 1990, according to Chad Wolf, former DHS. And Joe Biden expelling families. Most of the families are being expelled and so on and so forth. This is not the time to come and so on and so forth. It's a lie. December of 2020 under Trump, more than 75% of family units were expelled from the country. In February under Biden, barely more than half that, 41%. A report from Axios from the second week of March, 13% of family units sent back. You can understand the frustration. We go through the numbers, we go through what's happening on the border, and you have a Joe Obama administration that for 8 years prior to Trump and now 3 months into their third term continue to tell you that something that you see and something that is easily documentable is in fact not true. And yet there's no resolution in the offing, at least not to your satisfaction and safety and interest. For more on all of this, we're pleased to be joined again for our weekly hit with Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano, Vice President of the Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for International Studies at the Heritage Foundation, and author of Wiki at War, Private Sector Public Wars. Lieutenant Colonel Jim, thanks for joining us.
Hey, great to see you have John there to kind of class the place up.
Yeah, exactly. And we like to do that from time to time.
Hey, Jim.
It's a treat for our audience. So what about this hamster wheel that we keep spinning on, Jim?
Well, look, it is about a partisan agenda and not about having anything to do with what Americans want. I mean, there was a lot of analysis and polling before the election reflecting on everything the last administration did. And on immigration and border security, there was actually a lot of bipartisan support for President Trump's policies. And, you know, it depends on how you ask the question. If you are we a nation of immigrants? Everybody says, well, yeah, of course, we love that. But if you ask if people have concerns about illegal immigration, they would say yes. And they always consistently listed three things. One is we don't like the unfairness. We don't like that some people have to follow the rules, follow the laws, and other people could jump the line and actually get rewarded for that. So there's this inherent unfairness that Americans see. They don't like the fact that taxpayers have to bear all the burden of the cost of illegal immigration, whether it's at the border or in their own communities. And they don't like the fact that it makes them less safe in their own homes. And that's not that they think all illegal immigrants are criminals, but they see what the cartels do. They see the intended crime that goes with sanctuary cities. And, of course, now we see the public health issues. So I got to tell you, Americans did not sign up for this. They may have voted for this administration for a lot of reasons, but essentially to treat immigration and border security like a scufflaw, that was not one of them.
Do you think that the critics of Biden policy on the southern border are making too much out of it as a security risk? You know, people on the terror watch list come in,
right,
or not? Because I'm wondering if, you know, what would analysts say from Iran be looking at here?
Well, you know, I'm going to give you a different answer on that than I would have given just 6 months ago. Traditionally, when people ask me about national security concerns on the border, and you know, like terrorists sneaking across, I said, look, terrorists have tried every way to get in the country they could possibly imagine.
Of course.
But if you wanted to look for terrorists trying to come to the United States, the overwhelming number try to come through lawful means, and it's because they're not stupid. I mean, terrorists are relatively scarce assets. They like to know what the problem they're going to face, and they didn't see that on the southern border. But here's where my answer would differ: is when you actually have pure open border policies, and literally you send out the signal that virtually anybody that crosses the border can get in the border. That it does to me introduce new national security concerns that if I was trying to get into this country today, I would come across the southern border. And the other thing I would say is it opens you up to another vulnerability, national security vulnerability, which is the weaponization of migration. We saw this in Europe, where the Syrians just poured a whole bunch of people into Western Europe, and it's almost completely destabilized Western Europe. We have now opened ourselves up to that from adversarial actors, that they can just figure out how to put a bunch of people on the road and flood the United States. And we have no safeguards against that. So, yeah, I think for me, in addition to the public health risks, the $14 million a day that we're pouring into the cartels, that we're importing COVID every day, that we're importing a bunch of people coming looking for jobs at the time that we have 6% unemployment. In addition to all those concerns, I do think national security concerns are a bigger deal than they were just 3 months ago.
Yeah, it's interesting that you have some border district Democrats speaking out too, like Henry Cuellar in Texas, and others about the policy, what's actually happening at the border. They're not just rinsing and repeating the Biden administration narrative. but it doesn't seem to really matter. It doesn't seem, it's almost, I think Victor Davis Hanson has described this as well. It's almost like that Joe Biden is really sort of indifferent to the political consequences of the policies he's pursuing, because this is how he's going to make his stamp, and how, they plan, perhaps combined with H.R. 1 and revisiting, eliminating, tailoring the filibuster accordingly to establish Democrat hegemony for generations to come. And the way you do that is by changing the composition of the electorate and the percentage of people dependent on the federal government, the short-term political consequences notwithstanding.
Well, I think there is some fairness to that concern. I mean, if you look at H.R. 1, it's designed to really significantly reduce safeguards to non-citizen residents voting in elections. And if you look on top of that, you've got multiple amnesty bills, which essentially give everybody here a resident status and a path to citizenship. So it is. I think that's a legitimate concern. The other thing I think is interesting is look at how this is their first real crisis. It's interesting that so far their approach to crisis management is actually very similar to what it was under Obama. And Ebola is a good example of that. The first thing is you deny there's a crisis, and you have a friendly media and friendly pundits and friendly members of Congress who are happy to repeat your talking points. I thought it was really interesting that when Biden talked about the border in his press conference, all he did was actually repeat the talking points that they'd already put out and that everybody else had already said 1,000 times. So first you deny there's a crisis, and then you don't do anything about it until it looks like you're starting to pay a political price for the crisis, where people are coming after you and blaming you, and then essentially you create a bright shining object, whether it's I'm going to study this, or an Ebola czar or whatever, and then you just kind of hope people move on and it goes away. That's really kind of how they dealt with Ebola. It's how they dealt with Syria. It's how they dealt with Libya. So it's interesting that Biden essentially is following the same formula. I guess not surprising, since you have a lot of former Obama people in the administration. I do think what's really interesting in this situation is the fact that this story's not going away. And ironically, it's not going away not because you have a bunch of Republican senators going to the border, not because you have Chad Wolf and Mark Morgan and Ken Cuccinelli and Tom Homan screaming on Fox News. It's not going away because mainstream media, CBS, NBC, NPR, they are covering this story, and they cannot ignore the story because everyday Americans on both sides of the political aisle are asking a lot of uncomfortable questions, and so they can't even walk away from it. So this is an interesting test for this administration. Look, I can't think of anything more tone deaf than to try to push through amnesty bills at the same time you're demonstrating the border is completely not under control. I mean, that's just a complete self-inflicted wound. If you're going to have open borders, why wouldn't you get the amnesty bills pushed through first and then have open border policies? If you're having open border policies and you're getting huge blowback, why wouldn't you deal with that and then put the amnesty through? So there's an enormous hubris here that they've ignored essentially the entire political context, and they're just trying to drive forward and just slam through this political agenda. I think they have the steam to do it.
As long as President Susan Rice thinks that she can do it, I suppose she'll push forward. In the meantime, I have to ask you about Vice President Harris. Biden, the dry cork bobbing endlessly to the left, has put her in the position of running or being the point person for immigration. And then her people avoided it, and the other day said she's not going to go to the border. What are we supposed to make of that?
That was really interesting. Whereas, it was very clear. It was very clear Biden was saying she's going to quarterback this. And then literally within 48 hours, her spokesperson said, no, she's not. She's just going to do some diplomatic outreach for the president, which, look, none of this passes the common sense test. First of all, it was Biden who always said that he was the one who dealt with Latin America under Obama, and he was the one who had relationships, and he understood how to deal with that. So that doesn't make any sense that he would hand the diplomacy off to her. And I think she's just trying to like not get in the middle of this. I mean, she doesn't want to be tar babied on this. And look, the whole other thing is why it didn't make sense is you appoint a czar or somebody like that because there's a gap of authorities, there's a lack of coordination, there's some kind of leadership gap that you have to fill. The border crisis wasn't created because there's, lack of it. It was created because they put bad policies in place, and the only way to fix it is to reverse all those policies. You don't need to put somebody in charge of that. You just need to say, okay, stop all those policies. So I'm not really sure what that was going to do. So it was literally a no-win situation for her. And quite honestly, I think she's not stupid by just walking away from that one.
Yeah, I mean, the Joe Obama administrations have about as good a track record with quarterbacks as the Bears. I wanted to get your take on former CDC Director Redfield's pronouncement about his belief as an experienced virologist of where the COVID-19 virus may have originated, the Wuhan Virology Lab. Tony Fauci sort of downplaying it, the WHO coming out today and resuscitating the wet market theory. How should we interpret all of this supposition from those quarters?
Well, first of all, I'm not an epidemiologist, and I believe we have to follow the facts and the science. I don't think we have the facts and the science to tell us where this thing really came from. I think the lesson we take away from this is the odds that we're going to get a resolution of that anytime soon are, pretty small. But I think we have to always go back to the point is it's still China's fault. Regardless of where it came from, the disease spread because the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, knew that it was extremely contagious. They knew that there were populations that would be extremely vulnerable to this, and yet they did not report under the WHO guidelines, which were, by the way, put in place because the Chinese screwed up the last pandemic. They let tens of thousands of people travel knowing that they were likely infected and that they would create a global pandemic. So regardless of where it started, the global pandemic is China's fault, and I think the facts on that are already irrefutable.
He is Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano, VP of the Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for International Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Jim, thanks as always.
Right. Thanks for having John on.
Yes, it's always our pleasure.
See you later, Colonel.
And you join us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Did you know regular routine maintenance on your roof is as important as changing the oil in your car? Without regularly scheduled maintenance, your roof system will begin to break down, costing you money sooner than you think. Protect your investment with a roof maintenance plan from Waukegan Roofing. A Waukegan Roofing roof maintenance plan will help extend the expected service life of a new or existing roof system, will satisfy manufacturer and warranty requirements for regular inspections and maintenance, will identify problem areas and provide real-time solutions before they become big-ticket items. Oh, and it will give you peace of mind. It's time for protection and peace of mind with a roof maintenance plan from Waukegan Roofing, because every building needs an exceptional mechanic for the roof. Call Waukegan Roofing today at 877-ROOF-201. That's 877-ROOF-201. Or visit us online at waukeganroofing.com. That's waukeganroofing.com. Waukegan Roofing, installing roofs you can rely on since 1914.
Illinois licensee 104000761.
If you are looking to purchase a new home or refinance your existing home, then you need to call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Most listeners who secured an FHA loan after June of 2013 with a loan to value of greater than 90% will pay private mortgage insurance for the entire term of their loan. This is so important, I'm going to say it again. Most listeners who secured an FHA loan after June of 2013 with a loan to value greater than 90% will pay private mortgage insurance for the entire term of their loan.